Happy Friday, friends. We want to talk about on this Finance Friday, what does it mean? What are the things you need to do to start a business? Now, we're not going to dig into all the things because there's quite a few things, but we put together a checklist that we're going to have available for you for free. That's part of our entrepreneur course that allows you to move through what it means to start a business, all the way from marketing and naming your organization to implementing it in the marketing scheme so that you can actually have sales. So we're just going to go through the implemented section, basically the checklist of things that you need to do to start a company. So the first thing that you need to do is decide on your legal structure. Well, the first thing you need to do is make sure that you have a viable company through conversation and all the things. But once you've made that decision, hey, I'm going to do it, how do you go about actually doing it? Is you create a company. Now, there's different ways that you can do it, and there's the legal aspect, and then there's also the taxation aspect. So this will affect you differently depending on your current situation. So the legal structure is typically a sole proprietor, which it can just be your name. You can create an LLC that gives you some protection. An LLP, if it's a partnership, you can create a C Corp or an S Corp. Now, depending on the type of organization that you're going to have would depend on which one you choose. So the most common for service-oriented businesses are an LLC, and then eventually you make an S election, so you're taxed as an S Corp. So you get to take advantage of the corporate tax code, but you're still a partnership. So there's a little bit of differentiation there, but that's the typical way, is starting as an LLC. You can be an LLC and be a sole proprietor, a partnership, or an S Corp. So your taxation can be different depending on what your needs are, how much money you're making, and what the other things are that you are doing in your organization, in your business. So decide on your legal structure. I would have a quick conversation with a CPA that's heavy in tax and talk about, here's what I think I'm going to do in year one and what should I do. So I usually recommend people go LLC and then make the S election once you start killing it financially so that you can avoid some self-employment tax. So that's my recommendation typically. Now, don't take that and blanket that, because that's going to be different depending on your setup. So make sure you do that. So that's number one, is decide on your legal structure. Number two is registering with the Secretary of State. Now, this sounds super scary. It's not that scary. It's super easy. Most states have online platforms. I know the areas that we're in, Minnesota, North Dakota, Wisconsin, I've done all of those. Simple process, probably 10 to 15 minutes at most, answering some questions, paying a fee, and then they will send you their certification or their certificate that you're registered with the Secretary of State going in there. Now, you have to make sure that the business name that you want to use is available. Now, sometimes it's not. So very common names, or sometimes not even common names. Like I registered one that was just 3 initials, and there was already one in the state of North Dakota, just in a different part of the state. So I had to do it different than that. So you can register your name. If that name's taken, then you have the ability to register a different name and then do a doing business as, or a trade name for the actual brand name that you're putting out there. So registering with the Secretary of State is number 2. Number 3, apply for an EIN. So this is whether you have employees or not. It just means you don't want to use your social security number for your business. So if you're a sole proprietor, if you're the only person owning the business, then you can use your social security number on your W-9, which your W-9 is what you give people who are paying you so that they can report the proper taxation reporting that comes with a 1099. So if you give them a W-9, that either is going to have an EIN that you're going to apply for, or your social security number if you're a sole proprietor. So the EIN, now if you just type in apply for EIN, the ones that come up are going to be ads that try to make you pay for it. So, Google ads, if you pay money, then you get top list, right, for Google. So go down a little bit until you get past the ads, and .gov, irs.gov is the address, the web address that you want to go to apply for your EIN for free. It shouldn't cost you anything. If it costs you something, you're on the wrong page, but it just asks you some questions. You'll need your legal name of your business, you'll need your address of where you're going to get mail and do all the things, and then you'll need your personal social security number because it does need to tie to a human being. So that's how you apply for an EIN. Again, super simple process. You can get that EIN online and get the PDF document that you'll need for the bank or anybody else that asks for it. The next thing that you need to do is determine whether any special licenses or permits are required based on your services or products. So if you're selling products, you're going to need a sales tax permit. If you are selling beer or wine or then you're gonna need a liquor or a beer and wine permit. If you're selling other things, there could be a permit. If you're providing daycare services, there's a license that goes along with that. If you're calling yourself a CPA, there's a license that goes along with that. So just making sure that you do the research in your local community. Usually that's driven, licensures and permits are driven either by the city or the state. So if you talk to somebody who's in the industry that you're already in and ask them those questions, doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing it right. It just means that you've done your homework. And if it's a commonly known thing, then you want to make sure that you apply for those licenses, and those have fees as well. And then the fifth thing would be space. So I would encourage you to work out of free space as long as you can. Don't enter into a lease. Don't build a building the moment you decide to jump into a business. Make sure that it's viable and that you can support those things. So typically a lender won't borrow you money for a building if you don't have history in a business anyway. But also in the lease case, often they will ask for a few years financials to make sure that you're financially sound, unless you're the financial commitment that you're looking to make in that lease space is small. So I would encourage you to do as much as you can from free space, and then when it comes time to rent or to buy, make sure that you're looking at that. And we wrote a blog post about this particular case with leasing and what are the questions you need to ask, what are the things you need to dig into when you're leasing a space. So go check out our blog for that. The sixth thing is get insurance. So insurance helps protect you against things. So if you have a space, you will need insurance. That will be a requirement of the lease to, one, protect the space is the biggest thing that the landlord wants from that insurance. But if you're also providing a professional insurance or professional service, you're going to want professional liability insurance, so that if you do make a mistake or do something that your client feels is wrong, that you are protected in that case as well. So professional liability would be on the services side. If you have any vehicles, anything that you're driving for your business, you'll want some general liability as well as auto and anything that comes from that. So call your insurance agent. If they don't specialize in commercial insurance, they'll probably know somebody who does, so they can reference that. If you're still an itty bitty company and you have nothing that nobody can take, then this is a little bit less of a concern. But as you grow, it becomes more of a concern, so that you don't get yourself in a situation where you aren't protected to handle that. And then 7 is set up an accounting system. So QuickBooks Online is really the easiest, user-friendly one if you're doing it yourself. Now, you can screw it up, so don't hesitate to reach out to somebody who's a professional in that realm, whether that's Light or somebody else that has worked in QuickBooks, who has set up the system and can help you do it the most efficient way possible. So one of our more recent clients has an online business where they sell goods and services. Well, we can connect QuickBooks to their platform in which they do that, but then also that's a duplication of data, and it's a lot of data because the products that they're selling are fairly inexpensive, but they sell a lot of them. So if you can imagine every piece duplicating the process. So rather than doing that, let's figure out the most efficient way so that we can gather the data without duplicating things, information, and processes. So setting up your accounting system is next. Now, if you're going to grow really fast, it might be a good idea to take some time to really think about, if we're a $10 million company next year, what accounting system will help us grow in that, so that you have a really good foundation and a platform to leap off of. Most people don't go from 0 to 10 million in a year. So if you do, that's fantastic, and I'm excited for you. But if you aren't there yet, I wouldn't make a large investment into your accounting software. We also have a PDF in the course called Monetize It Terminology that will help you understand what the accounts are in accounting, in your accounting software, because you are going into business because you love doing something, you love providing a service or a product, not because you're an accountant. And then if you happen to be an accountant, which the person who said, let's talk about what it means to start a business and what you need to do, was actually accountant. So she'll be fine as far as how to do the accounting. But if that's not familiar to you, make sure that you take that. We also have Finance Simplified coming up down in this fall. So make sure if you want to learn more, you hop onto that. The other thing is to set up a bank account, a separate bank account for your business. It can still, if you're a sole proprietor, it can still be your name, just making sure that all the monies that are running through your business are running through that account, so that you don't have this mess at the end of the year when it comes to tax time to say, oh, this was personal. Basically going through your bank statements from the beginning of the year and saying, oh, this Target run was a business expense because I bought binders and office supplies, and this Target run was just food for my family. So you don't have to go through all of that. If you set up a separate bank account, then everything that's going through that bank account is the business expense. I would also encourage you to get a credit card that's separate, so that you can pay for things that are business expense with that card and not commingle funds with your personal. So that's one of the biggest and easiest things that you can do, is just set up a separate bank account and set up a separate credit card or debit card. If you don't believe in credit cards, that's perfectly fine too. And then lastly, you need to market it. So you need to have sales to have a viable business. And that is a whole nother thing in itself. So we're not going to really go into that, besides knowing that you have to have people believe in you and in your products to be a successful business. So you're going to have to put yourself out there so that people notice you and so that they can come to you. So whether that's on social media, or you can do it via word of mouth, like, hey friends, I'm doing this. Who do you know that I should know? Who could use my services or my products, and go about it that way. So there's also lots of resources online and other podcasts that you can listen to about how to market your business so that you can get those sales, so that you can continue to make money. So those are the tactical checklist items that you need to do to start a business. If you need more information, feel free to reach out.